They called me a disgrace, and I stood there, frozen, while my own brother tore my name apart in front of everyone. That night still plays in my head like a film I can't turn off. The flashing lights, the guests whispering, the sound of glasses clinking right before the silence hit. My brother Ryan stood across the table, his eyes filled with rage, and in one cruel sentence, he destroyed everything I thought we were as a family. It was supposed to be a celebration, his engagement dinner, the night our family would finally be proud again after months of tension. But instead, it became my public execution. He pointed at me, voice shaking with anger, and said I had betrayed our parents. That I had leaked private family documents to humiliate him. Everyone gasped. I remember my mother's face, cold, distant, refusing to meet my eyes. My father just lowered his head, as if silence could make the shame disappear. And I couldn't even speak. Not because I was guilty, but because in that moment, I realized something far worse. They believed him. When I finally found my voice, it was too late. The guests had already formed their opinions. I heard someone whisper, "Poor Ryan, imagine your own sister doing that." It felt like a punch to the chest. I wanted to scream, to tell them all that it wasn't true, that I would never destroy my family's name. But the truth doesn't matter when people crave scandal more than facts. After everyone left, I stood in that empty hall, staring at the broken decorations and the wine stains on the carpet, wondering how love can turn into humiliation so fast. Ryan's words echoed in my head, "You're a disgrace, Elena." And that's when something inside me shifted. If he wanted to make me the villain in his story, then I would write my own. Because one day, every lie he told, every secret he buried, would rise to the surface. And when it did, the whole family would finally know who the real disgrace was. On Sundays, our house glowed like a postcard. My mother, Diane, arranged lilies on the sideboard and said they made the place feel worthy of our last name. My father, Frank, polished the family photo frames until our smiles looked brighter than the lamps. We did what families are supposed to do. We sat together, passed bowls of food, and laughed at the same old stories. From the outside, it felt like respect. On the inside, it felt like a test I kept failing. I tried to be the daughter who doesn't make noise. I handled the store ledgers, scheduled deliveries, stayed late when staff called in sick. When customers praised the neat shelves or the new checkout system, Dad nodded but said, "Ryan will love hearing that when he gets back." Ryan wasn't even working that day. He rarely was. Still, the praise took the same path, straight to my brother, as if good news had his name on it and nothing else. At dinner, Mom served him first. She called it tradition. "He burns more calories," she'd joke, pressing an extra piece of roast onto his plate. "Big plans need big fuel." Ryan had charm that soaked up the room. He'd toss out a story, and people leaned forward. I learned to pull back, to listen. It was safer that way. It preserved the calm. "Don't slouch, Elena," Mom would say without looking at me. "You're lovely when you sit up straight." She didn't mean to hurt me. But little cuts don't ask permission. They just sting. Aunt Melinda visited most weeks, with gossip packaged like gifts. She adored Ryan, laughed at everything he said, and treated my ideas like coasters, useful, then forgotten. Once I suggested a modest charity drive at the store. She glanced at Ryan. "If he announces it, people will care," she said. "He knows how to talk to a crowd." I swallowed and nodded. Of course. Clara, my brother's fiancée, slid into our world like a perfect key. She was warm in public and careful in private. She complimented my cooking, brought me candles, took photos of the table. But sometimes, when the laughter peaked and everyone watched Ryan, I'd catch her eyes on me, measuring. You can feel it when someone files you away in a folder marked "not a threat." The week before the engagement dinner, we threw a small barbecue. Neighbors dropped in, kids raced on the lawn, and Mom kept saying, "This is how it should be." Mrs. Patel from next door arrived late with a tray of samosas and that quiet look of hers that sees more than it says. She hugged me and whispered, "You look tired, child." I told her I was fine. Good daughters in good homes are always fine. Ryan showed up an hour after the grill cooled, wearing that smile that bends every rule. "Traffic," he said, and Mom shut down the possibility of complaint with a flick of her hand. He turned to me and added, "You didn't forget the speech I asked you to draft? The one praising our future?" He laughed like it was adorable, that I'd do the writing and he'd get the applause. I handed him the pages. "You can edit," I said. Make it yours.
He clapped my shoulder.
You always know how to save the day. Sit, Dad said, pointing to the chair at the far end of the table. We saved your favorite.
It wasn't my favorite. It was the seat with the bad leg that wobbled if you breathed too hard. I steadied it with a folded napkin and smiled. The room looked full and happy. My heart felt like it was hiding behind the curtains. After dessert, Mom passed around an old photo album. We lingered over the beach trip, the spelling bee, the store's opening day. Every page had a story with Ryan in the center and me at the edge, cropped by the frame or turned 3/4 away. You were always so responsible, Aunt Melinda told me, tapping my smaller picture. A good helper. Then she lifted her wine and toasted Ryan, to the one who carries the ward name forward. Everyone cheered. I swallowed the taste of something bitter. Later, in the kitchen, Clara joined me while I washed dishes. You must be excited, she said, drying a glass. Your brother's wedding will be huge for the family. I nodded. He deserves a beautiful day. She smiled at the window's reflection more than at me. He does, she said softly, and the right image matters. Secrets ruin everything. The word hung in the steam between us. I couldn't tell if it was a warning or a wish. Dad drifted in, laid a ledger on the counter, and asked me to review some numbers when you get a minute. He kissed my forehead in that distracted way, gratitude without eye contact, then returned to the porch where Ryan was telling a story about expanding the store into a second location. I didn't know we were expanding. Apparently, everyone else did. Do you ever feel invisible? I asked the empty sink after Clara left. My voice sounded like a stranger's. I dried my hands and went outside. The night air carried laughter and the scrape of chairs on wood. Mom stood beside Ryan, proud and glowing, while he promised big plans and bigger respect for the family. When he raised his glass, the crowd mirrored him like a lake. To the wards, he said, and to protecting what we built. He looked straight at me as he spoke the word protecting. My stomach turned. Congrats, I said later, handing him his speech, neatly revised. He scanned the pages and smirked. Perfect. You always make me look good. Then, almost playful, almost sharp, he added, you'll keep doing that, right? I forced a smile. As long as it's the truth. He laughed. Truth is a team effort, sis. Behind us, Mrs. Patel watched from the fence line, thoughtful, like she'd heard a note under the music that didn't belong. She gave me a small nod, a kindness, or a warning, I wasn't sure. The porch light flickered once, then steadied. And in that bright, careful house of harmony, something in the foundation shifted, just enough for me to feel the wobble before anyone else noticed. It started with a missing signature. Just one. A single line left blank on a set of financial papers my father kept in his office drawer, a drawer I wasn't even supposed to open. I'd been helping balance the store accounts that morning when I noticed it. The number looked off, too high for a week's profit. I carried the file to Dad, hesitating in the doorway as he spoke to Ryan. They were laughing, easy, confident laughter, the kind that used to make me proud. Until I realized they were talking about me. She tries too hard, Ryan said. Always double-checking my work like she's the boss. Dad chuckled. She means well. But numbers can wait, she should think about her future, not ledgers. I stood there, file clutched in my hand, wondering how something as small as doing my job could turn into another reason I wasn't enough. Later that week, I learned the truth behind that file, a quiet loan Ryan had taken in Dad's name. No one told me, of course. I overheard it when Mom's voice rose behind the closed kitchen door. He's our son, Frank. We can't let him look irresponsible before the wedding. My chest tightened. They weren't angry about what he'd done, only about how it might look. That was when the humiliation began to grow roots. Ryan started locking the office drawers. When I asked why, he laughed. You've been snooping, Elena. Let's keep boundaries clear. The way he said it, light, teasing, was worse than shouting. Because Mom was standing right there, smiling as if he'd just made a clever joke. She's just trying to help, I said quietly. Ryan leaned in, smirking. Help or control? The silence afterward said everything. Days passed. People started acting differently around me. Aunt Melinda stopped asking for my opinion. Clara's sweet tone sharpened into politeness that bit like ice. At the store, customers whispered about tension in the family. I pretended not to hear. Then, one night,
Mom called a family discussion. We sat in the living room, surrounded by trophies and old portraits, symbols of respect that suddenly felt like props. Ryan spoke first, pretending to sound hurt. I hate to say this, but I think Elena's been careless with information, he said, eyes downcast, hands folded like a saint. The investor data somehow leaked online, and the only laptop that accessed those files was hers.
My throat went dry.
That's not possible. I didn't even.
He cut me off.
We traced it, Elena. Dad looked away.
Mom sighed.
These are serious claims, sweetheart. Maybe you clicked something without realizing.
Clicked something.
That was her faith in me, a careless mistake, not malice, but still my fault. I didn't leak anything, I said firmly. I'd never do that to our family.
Ryan leaned back.
Then who did?
The air turned heavy.
My parents exchanged a glance, and I saw it, doubt. Sharp, cold, final. The next morning, our extended relatives knew everything. Aunt Melinda called it a shameful misunderstanding. The phrase spread faster than truth ever could. Everywhere I went, eyes followed. In the store, at church, at the bakery. Some pitied me, others avoided me entirely. Clara began visiting the house daily, consoling Ryan like a wounded hero. You'll rise above this, she whispered to him in the kitchen. I passed by once and caught her reflection in the window. She was smiling. When I entered the room, they went quiet.
Don't take it personally, Ryan said.
We're all just trying to move forward. By blaming me?
I asked. He smiled again.
By keeping peace. That night, I went through my laptop, desperate for any sign of tampering. Hidden deep in the sent folder, I found an email, one I never wrote, sent to a fake journalist account, leaking private figures from the store. It used my name, my tone, even my signature. But the timestamp told another story. It was sent when I was at the grocery store with Mom. When I confronted Ryan the next day, he didn't deny it. He didn't need to.
His smirk said enough.
Careful what you accuse me of, he murmured. You already look guilty. People trust me, not you. I wanted to slap him, scream, expose him right there, but I saw Clara watching from the hallway, recording the moment on her phone. She smiled when I noticed. That's when I realized it wasn't just Ryan. They were a team. By the following week, my mother refused to let me attend the engagement party unless I promised to behave.
Dad avoided eye contact.
And the one person who could have defended me, my brother, was the reason I'd lost everything. I told myself I could survive the whispers. I told myself the truth would find a way out. But when Ryan raised his glass at the engagement dinner and turned the crowd's attention to me, when he called me a disgrace who betrayed her own blood, I understood something new.
He didn't just want to silence me. He wanted to erase me. And that's the night my pain turned into a plan. They say humiliation fades with time.
But in my house, it echoed, through breakfast conversations, Sunday visits, and every polite smile that hid disgust. After the engagement dinner, I told myself things would calm down. They didn't.
They got worse.
At first, it was small things. Mom stopped calling me for family errands. Dad spoke to me only through notes left on the kitchen counter. Ryan's laughter, that smooth, confident sound, filled every room I walked into. Clara began forgetting to include me in family messages. I'd learn about events after they happened, like a ghost in my own home. Then came the whispers. Aunt Melinda's voice, loud enough to be overheard. You can forgive mistakes, but betrayal? That stains blood.
Blood. That word stung more than all the gossip combined.
At work, customers hesitated before greeting me.
Some didn't come back at all.
Ryan had quietly taken over the store's public image, claiming he was protecting the family business. He even replaced my name from the accounting sheets.
When I asked about it, he smiled.
It's just better for optics right now. You know how people talk. People talk because you gave them a reason, I snapped.
His smirk didn't even falter. What's your tone, sis?
You don't want to sound ungrateful.
Ungrateful. That was the new title they'd given me.
One evening, Mom invited Clara's family for dinner. A perfect opportunity, she said, to prove we've moved on. The house looked like a showroom again. Crystal plates, candles, laughter rehearsed to perfection. I cooked the main course because no one else wanted to risk burning it, but when guests arrived, Mom introduced it as Clara's idea. I stood there, wiping my hands on a towel, smiling like it didn't matter. During dessert, Clara leaned close to Ryan and whispered something. He burst out laughing, the kind of laugh that invites everyone else to join without knowing why. "What's so funny?"
Aunt Melinda asked.
Ryan looked at me and said, just remembering how Elena used to run the books, before she got creative with the numbers.
The room erupted in nervous laughter. My hands trembled.
I stared at the floor, my throat thick with shame. "That's enough," I muttered. He leaned back in his chair, enjoying every second. "Just teasing, sis.
Don't be so sensitive." No one defended me. Not even Dad.
That night, I cried quietly in my room, not out of sadness, but because I couldn't understand how love had turned into sport. Days blurred together. Ryan flaunted his success. Clara paraded her engagement photos online, each caption a subtle jab about honesty, loyalty, and family unity.
My friends stopped visiting.
Even Mrs. Patel began leaving mail at the gate instead of the door. Then came the charity gala, hosted by my mother's club, where appearances mattered more than truth. I wasn't supposed to attend, but she insisted I help with arrangements. "It'll show people you're still part of the family," she said. When I arrived, wearing a simple black dress, I noticed how people whispered as I passed. Ryan stood on stage beside Clara, accepting praise for reviving the ward business. He thanked everyone, except me. Halfway through, I heard Clara's voice behind me.
"She still shows up? How brave." Her friends giggled. I turned.
"If you have something to say it to my face." She tilted her head, smiling. "Oh, Elena. You already said enough when you hit send, didn't you?"
The words hit harder than I expected. My vision blurred.
People were watching, the same people who once respected our family.
I walked out before I cried.
Outside, under the cold night sky, I could hear the applause from inside.
For them. For the lie.
When I returned home, Dad was waiting. "You embarrassed us," he said flatly.
For walking out.
For drawing attention. I was humiliated in front of everyone.
I shouted. He didn't flinch.
"Then stop giving them reasons to." Something in me broke that night, the part that still believed silence was strength. The next morning, I noticed my personal laptop was gone. My emails, too. Ryan claimed it had been accidentally formatted. All my documents, photos, proof, erased. I felt stripped bare, defenseless. When I confronted him, he smiled. "Maybe the universe wants you to let go." Later that week, Clara dropped off invitations for a family preview of their wedding rehearsal dinner.
Mine wasn't among them.
"Maybe it got lost in the mail," she said sweetly. "You've been losing a lot of things lately, haven't you?"
Her tone was honeyed poison. I forced a smile.
"Don't worry, Clara. I always find what's lost." That night, I opened the one thing they didn't know I still had. The backup drive from the store's system. I'd saved it months ago, without thinking much of it. My hands shook as I scrolled through folders, until I saw it. A hidden file labeled Client Edits, RW. Inside were forged signatures, duplicated invoices, and a trail of lies, all leading straight back to Ryan. I stared at the screen as my pulse roared in my ears.
The truth wasn't lost. It had just been waiting.
And for the first time since that awful dinner, I didn't feel powerless. I felt ready, because the silence that had once protected them was about to break.
They say every betrayal has a sound.
For me, it was the sound of paper, the soft slide of my father's pen signing something that ended my place in the family forever. It happened on a Sunday morning, sunlight pouring through the curtains like it didn't know what was coming. I walked into the living room and saw them, my mother, father, Ryan, and Clara, seated around the table, coffee cups untouched. Their faces were grave, rehearsed.
Something was wrong.
Dad gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit, Elena." His tone was formal, almost cold. I sat, my palms slick with sweat. Ryan leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Clara's eyes flicked toward me, then away, as if she couldn't bear to look too long at the person she'd helped destroy.
Dad cleared his throat.
"After what happened these past months, your mother and I have made a difficult decision. For the sake of family stability, and to protect the business reputation, we've decided to transfer all managerial authority and inheritance rights to Ryan."
I blinked.
"You're what?"
Mom avoided my eyes. It's temporary, she said softly.
Until trust can be rebuilt. Trust.
I whispered.
I didn't do anything wrong.
Ryan folded his hands, pretending empathy. Elena, this isn't personal. You've been under stress.
Maybe it's best if you take time away.
Time away. That's what they called it. Exile wrapped in politeness. I turned to my father.
You believe him, after everything I've done for this family? The nights I stayed up balancing your books, the years I gave up my own career so the store could survive.
Dad's jaw tightened.
We're not discussing the past. The past.
My voice cracked.
You mean the truth.
Mom stood abruptly. Enough.
We're trying to end this peacefully.
Ryan reached across the table, sliding a document toward me.
You just need to sign here, to make the transition official. It'll avoid complications.
I stared at the paper. My name printed in neat ink. My role, revoked. Something inside me snapped.
You forged Dad's signature on those contracts, Ryan.
You lied, and you blamed me.
I have proof. For a second, just one, I saw panic flicker in his eyes.
But it vanished as quickly as it came. Proof, he echoed.
Do you mean those files you claimed to find? The ones that mysteriously disappeared after you got fired?
He smirked.
Maybe you should stop creating stories, Elena. People might start thinking you're unwell.
Unwell. The word hung in the air like poison.
Mom's lips tightened.
Don't say that, she murmured, but she didn't look at me.
Dad rubbed his temple. Elena, we've been patient. You've made enough scenes.
Sign it, and let's put this behind us. I felt dizzy. The room blurred. My own heartbeat sounded louder than their voices.
I wanted to scream, to make them see, but I realized they didn't want to see. They needed me to be guilty, so their image could stay clean.
My hand trembled over the pen.
For a second, I imagined signing it, disappearing quietly, like they wanted. But then Ryan's whisper reached me. Finally accepting your place, huh? Good girl.
The pen clattered to the floor.
I stood up.
You think you've won because you have them fooled?
I'll prove it, Ryan. I'll show everyone who you really are. He laughed, low, condescending. You already had your chance, and no one believed you. Maybe you should focus on therapy instead of revenge. That was the moment I realized they didn't just take my inheritance.
They took my voice.
When I left the room, Mom followed me halfway down the hall. Elena, please don't make this harder. We just want peace. Peace.
I turned to her.
You want silence.
She flinched but didn't argue.
I walked out of that house with nothing but a handbag and the faintest scrap of self-respect left. Outside, the sky was heavy with rain. I sat in my car, staring at the front door, the same one I'd walked through 1,000 times as their dutiful daughter, and realized I no longer had a home to return to.
That night, I stayed in a cheap motel outside town.
The neon light flickered against the walls, and I could still hear Ryan's voice in my head, that smug laugh, that poisonous calm. I replayed every humiliation, every lie, every dinner where I bit my tongue. I let the pain wash through me until there was nothing left but numbness. The next morning, I went through my old backup drive again. One file caught my eye, a folder I hadn't opened before, labeled transfers. Inside were documents Ryan had edited, with timestamps matching the day he accused me of leaking data. The evidence was there, hidden in plain sight.
My breath caught. This was what I needed.
The truth that could finally destroy his web of lies. But as I stared at those files, another realization settled in. Truth alone wouldn't be enough. People didn't want truth. They wanted a show. Ryan had turned my downfall into entertainment. If I wanted justice, I'd have to turn his exposure into the same. Outside, thunder cracked, loud, final. I looked at the dark sky and whispered, he called me a disgrace, but he hasn't seen what disgrace really looks like. For the first time in months, I didn't cry. I smiled, small, controlled, dangerous. Because that was the day I stopped being the victim of their story, and started writing my own. I slept like a person who finally knew what she was fighting for. Not the restless, hollow sleep of someone who waits for forgiveness, but a heavy, purposeful sleep like a soldier before dawn. When I woke, the room didn't look smaller. I did. For weeks after I left, I let anger burn and then cool into an instrument. Pain had taught me one useful thing. when people try to erase you, you must become impossible to ignore.
So I stopped pleading and started planning.
First, I gathered truth like a miser collects coins. The backup drive was the key. I copied every file, every invoice, every timestamp into 3 places. A secure cloud I'd set up under a false name. A flash drive I hid in Mrs. Patel's old cookie tin at her porch, because nosy neighbors are the best witnesses, and a printed folder I slipped into a safety deposit box across town. I learned a few things about encryption and timestamps that made my hands shake with excitement. It felt like learning to use a new, quiet weapon.
Noah became my closest ally. He didn't cheer or moralize.
He sat with me in the motel's dim light and taught me how to verify metadata, how to match IP addresses to locations, how to make a digital trail impossible to dismiss. People hide in lies, he said once, blunt and calm, but they leave fingerprints when they move in a hurry.
He was right.
Ryan's edits had sloppy timestamp overlaps. There were backups saved under his user ID. He'd left a breadcrumb trail, arrogant and small.
Then there was Mrs. Patel.
I approached her like a spy approaching an old friend. She'd seen Clara at the study window the night the email went out. She'd noticed Ryan's late-night walks to the office with a USB in his pocket. She didn't want to be in the middle of family fires, but she agreed to be present when the truth came out, not to gloat, but to testify to what she'd seen. Her voice was steady and kind as she said, "I will tell the truth. That is all I can do." I mapped the plan in stages, careful and surgical. Stage 1. Make the evidence undeniable. I had the forged documents, the altered ledgers, the emails sent from a spoofed address, all tied to the same machine and the same careless user. Noah authenticated the files and stamped them with verifiable proof. He made a short dossier, 3 pages, that any reasonable person could read and understand. It said, simply, this is how he lied.
This is when. This is why. No melodrama. Just facts.
Stage 2. Create witnesses and context. I arranged for Mrs. Patel to be at the rehearsal dinner as a neighbor friend. I contacted a young local journalist, discreet, hungry, and ethical, and sent them a teaser under a pseudonym, a whisper of a scandal with public figures.
I did not want sensational headlines.
I wanted one thing, authority. If this stayed inside the family, it would be dismissed. If it landed in the hands of someone who could verify and publish, the pressure would become public and real. Stage 3. Prepare the stage. The wedding reception would be crowded, emotional, perfect for a reveal.
But I didn't want screaming or chaos.
I wanted a clean, undeniable exposure that would strip the disguise from Ryan and whoever protected him. I rented, under another name, a small projector and a wireless speaker system. I booked a seat in the front row, not to shout, but to press a button. There was danger in every move. If I was discovered, they'd paint me as desperate, unstable, possibly violent. They would say I'd fabricated evidence. They would call me a disgruntled daughter looking for revenge.
That was why Noah's work mattered. He made sure the timestamps were rock solid.
He got copies to an independent IT consultant who agreed to corroborate the findings if asked. He told me, no forensics, no story, Elena. Make them need experts to deny it. Emotionally, I had to steel myself.
Revenge is a cold thing. It doesn't cheer you up.
It writes a ledger. I practiced my voice in the mirror until it was even and small, the kind of voice that cuts. I wrote a short statement, not to humiliate, but to call for truth. My brother framed me.
Here is the proof. Judge it for yourselves. It was simple. It was dignified.
It was meant to expose, not to destroy for sport. There were nights I almost cancelled everything. I thought of the hurt in my mother's eyes, the look on Dad's face that first morning I was asked to sign away my life. I wondered if exposing them would permanently ruin the memory of what laughter we'd once had.
I wondered if justice would feel like vengeance.
But every time doubt crept in, I pictured myself at that dining table, stunned and mute while Ryan called me a disgrace. I remembered how they applauded his charm and accepted his lies because they wanted the family's image preserved.
That image had cost me everything. Respect had been a currency spent on favorites. I wanted it back. So I kept my plans small and precise.
No public posts, no leaks that couldn't be controlled. Only a room full of witnesses, a recorded confession, a dossier in trustworthy hands, and the slow, sure exposure of a truth they'd worked so hard to bury. On the morning of the rehearsal dinner, I packed the flash drive into my coat pocket, checked the cloud copy twice, and met Noah across town to run one last verification.
He looked at me, eyes steady.
Once you press play, he said, There's no turning back.
I nodded. My hand found the drive like it had always known its way. Outside, the sky was calm.
Inside me, the storm was poised, patient, precise, and ready. The ballroom glowed with gold and champagne light, everything perfect, polished, controlled. Music drifted like perfume through the air. It was Ryan's wedding reception, the night he had dreamed of, the night he would stand before hundreds as the golden son, the man who saved the Ward family's name. I stood near the back, blending in with the caterers. My hair tied back, my dress plain, my pulse steady. No one recognized me at first, or maybe they just didn't expect I'd dare to show my face. Either way, the invisibility suited me.
For the first time, it gave me power.
Clara sparkled under the chandeliers in her white gown, all smiles and grace. Ryan, standing beside her, looked like everything I wasn't allowed to be, adored, untouchable, admired. My parents sat at the front table, glowing with pride.
Even Aunt Melinda's laughter rang like crystal.
I watched them from the corner, feeling my hands tremble around the small remote hidden in my palm. The projector I'd rented was tucked discreetly near the sound booth, the screen folded behind the stage curtain. One click, and years of lies would come undone. Noah stood by the exit, phone in hand, ready to record. Mrs. Patel had arrived quietly, taking a seat near the aisle. Her eyes met mine once, calm, certain, reassuring.
Then the master of ceremonies took the microphone.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for a toast. Let's hear it for our beloved groom, Ryan Ward.
Applause thundered.
Ryan stepped forward, charming and composed. Thank you, everyone, he began, raising his glass. Tonight isn't just about love, it's about loyalty, family, and rebuilding what was once broken.
The words made my skin crawl.
He paused for effect, smiling at the crowd. My parents, Frank and Diane, taught me that family reputation is everything. And though we've had our challenges, we've come through stronger, together.
I could almost taste the hypocrisy in the air. He lifted his glass higher.
And to my sister, Elena, wherever she is tonight, I hope she finds peace and forgiveness in her heart.
The crowd murmured sympathetically.
My mother lowered her gaze, as if the mention of my name was a stain.
That was my moment. I stepped forward, my heels clicking against the marble floor.
The sound cut through the chatter like thunder.
Heads turned. Murmurs rose. Ryan froze.
Elena?
Every eye in the hall shifted to me. I smiled faintly. Don't stop on my account.
You were doing such a beautiful job rewriting history.
Gasps rippled. My mother stood abruptly. Elena, this isn't the time. I ignored her.
My voice was calm, almost soft.
No, Mom. It's the perfect time.
Because if tonight is about loyalty and family, then maybe it's time everyone here sees what loyalty really looks like in our family. Ryan's face paled, the confidence slipping just slightly. You're not welcome here, he hissed under his breath.
I know, I said.
But truth doesn't need an invitation.
I pressed the button. The lights dimmed.
The screen behind him flickered to life, first static, then a folder titled Client Transfers, Ward Family Business. The guests turned in confusion. The first image appeared, forged signatures, side by side. Then transaction records. Then an audio clip, Ryan's voice, captured from the night he argued with Clara. His words filled the hall. If Dad finds out I forged those contracts, I'm finished. She'll take the blame, just like before.
The room went dead silent. Ryan's mouth opened, but no sound came out.
Clara's face drained of color.
My father's hands trembled on the table.
My mother gasped, whispering, "Oh my God."
I walked closer to the stage.
That's what you called family loyalty, isn't it, Ryan? Framing your sister to save yourself.
He shook his head violently.
This is fake. You manipulated this.
Before I could reply, Mrs. Patel stood up.
Her voice, calm and clear, carried across the hall.
I saw him that night. At the study window.
With a USB drive.
The crowd erupted in whispers. Cameras came out.
A murmur spread like wildfire. Dad stood slowly, eyes wide with horror. Ryan, is this true?
Ryan stammered. No, she's lying. She's always been. I cut him off.
Don't you dare call another woman a liar to save yourself again.
My voice didn't shake. It rang with the weight of every humiliation I had swallowed. Clara suddenly burst into tears.
I told you this would happen, she cried, turning to him. You said you deleted everything.
More gasps.
Ryan grabbed her wrist, hissing, "Stop talking."
But the damage was done.
The guests backed away. Some whispered, others recorded, but all of them saw the perfect sun unraveling, the mask falling apart. My mother covered her face with trembling hands. My father sank into his chair, wordless. I turned toward them. You wanted peace, remember?
You said the truth would destroy this family.
Maybe destruction was the only way to make room for honesty. Ryan lunged toward the stage controls, trying to shut off the screen. But Noah was faster. He stepped forward, unplugging the mic and locking the laptop.
Don't bother, he said quietly.
Everything's backed up. Ryan stopped, chest heaving, eyes burning into me.
You've ruined us, he spat.
I stepped closer, my voice barely above a whisper.
No. You did.
I just stopped cleaning up after your lies. The room was silent except for the low hum of the projector fan. Then, slowly, the guests began clapping, hesitant at first, then louder. Not out of joy, but out of the shock of witnessing justice unfold in real time.
I didn't bow.
I didn't smile. I just stood there, breathing, watching the empire of lies collapse around the people who once called me a disgrace. Ryan was escorted out by security, shouting that it wasn't over. My parents stayed frozen in their seats, their pride in ruins. Clara wept quietly, mascara streaking her cheeks. I turned to leave, the remote still warm in my hand. As I reached the door, I looked back once more at the wreckage of the life I'd lost. Respect isn't something you inherit, I said softly, mostly to myself. It's something you earn, and tonight, I finally earned mine. And with that, I walked out into the night, not broken, not vengeful anymore, but free.
The truth had spoken.
And for once, everyone had listened.
The next morning, the house was quiet. Too quiet. No more champagne laughter. No music. No speeches about family pride.
Just silence, the kind that follows when truth finishes what it came to do.
I didn't go home that night.
I drove until the sun rose, the city lights fading into the gray dawn. For the first time in years, I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. My heart was steady, like it had found its rhythm again after years of beating too fast for the wrong people. When I stopped at a diner on the outskirts of town, my reflection in the window looked lighter. Still tired, yes.
Still scarred. But no longer ashamed.
Inside, my phone buzzed endlessly, missed calls, unread messages. From Mom.
From Aunt Melinda. Even from Clara. I turned it face down.
I didn't need their explanations anymore. Truth didn't need witnesses once it had already spoken in public. Noah joined me an hour later, still in his wrinkled suit from the night before. He ordered coffee and said nothing for a while, just sat across from me, letting the silence breathe. Finally, he looked up and asked, "How does it feel?"
I thought about it.
"Like the air's cleaner," I said softly.
He nodded.
"You didn't just prove them wrong, Elena. You broke the story they wrote about you."
That made me smile. Small, real.
Then maybe now I can start writing my own.
We finished breakfast in quiet peace.
I didn't know what would happen next, how my parents would react, whether Ryan would try to twist things again. But it didn't matter. For once, the weight of their opinions didn't define me. A few days later, I went back to the Ward house, not to reconcile, but to collect the last of my things. The air inside felt stale, heavy with embarrassment. I could hear Mom and Dad talking in the kitchen, hushed, defeated tones. When they saw me, my mother's eyes welled up instantly.
"Elena," she whispered.
I waited.
No anger. No satisfaction.
Just waiting to see if she'd finally say the one thing I'd longed to hear. "I believe you." But instead, she said, "You shouldn't have done it that way." Her words were soft, but they cut deeper than any accusation.
I took a slow breath.
"I did what you were too afraid to do," I replied. "Tell the truth." Dad lowered his gaze.
His voice cracked when he spoke.
"You've humiliated this family."
"No," I said quietly.
"I freed it." The silence that followed was heavy, like a curtain falling on a play that had gone on too long. I packed my things, the books I loved, a few framed photos from before everything broke. As I turned to leave, Mom caught my wrist. Her hand trembled. "Where will you go?" "Somewhere my name doesn't have to be defended," I said. And with that, I walked out, no shouting, no tears, just the sound of the door closing behind me. I found a small apartment downtown, nothing fancy, white walls, sunlight in the morning, and quiet at night. I got a job at an accounting firm a few towns over, one that valued competence more than connections. The first day I signed my name on a new file, it felt different, like a declaration. Sometimes, I'd catch people whispering my name when they recognized me from the news.
But it didn't sting anymore. Scandal fades. Integrity lasts.
Ryan's downfall came quietly, almost pitifully. The investor who had once praised him filed a fraud complaint after the files went public. The police questioned him, and though he avoided jail through legal maneuvers, his reputation didn't survive. Clara left him soon after, her engagement ring sold to pay off his debts. Aunt Melinda disappeared from social circles entirely. My parents never issued a statement. They simply faded into privacy, too ashamed to face the world they'd once tried so hard to impress.
And me? I stopped looking back.
I started volunteering at a women's support center, helping others who'd been silenced or framed by family politics and favoritism. Their stories mirrored mine in quiet, painful ways. Daughters made scapegoats to protect sons, wives blamed to preserve legacies. Each time I told my story, I saw something shift in their eyes, the same realization I'd come to: silence isn't peace.
It's surrender.
One evening, Mrs. Patel came by the center with a basket of food and that same gentle smile.
You walk lighter now, she said.
I laughed softly. That's what happens when you stop carrying other people's lies.
She nodded.
Truth costs, but peace pays better. Her words stayed with me. Months later, I drove past the old family house. It looked smaller, dimmer. The garden was overgrown, the front sign of the store gone. I didn't stop. I didn't need to. I just smiled at the quiet satisfaction of knowing I had survived what was meant to break me. People always think revenge is loud, shouting, breaking, destroying.
But real revenge is silent.
It's the peace you earn when everyone who once doubted you has to live with the truth you left behind. As I walked along the pier that evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I felt a strange calm, the kind I used to pray for. The waves moved slowly, steady and patient, like time itself was forgiving me for staying too long in the wrong story. I whispered into the wind. They called me a disgrace. But it turns out, disgrace is just what people say when you refuse to stay beneath them. The water caught the last of the sunlight, and in that reflection, I saw myself, not broken, not vengeful, just free.